From Devin's controversial win robbing Vasily Lomachenko of the undisputed lightweight title, to a series of boxers like Franklin demanding rematches after they were robbed in the ring, here's why Devin Haney proves boxing is dead. For one, after 12 rounds of thrilling action, Devin's unanimous win for the undisputed lightweight title created havoc in the boxing world, thanks to a disputed result that no two people can agree to. Because even though Loma landed more punches and rallied huge in the second half, Haney got the scores 116-112 and 115-113. Sure, it was a classic fight, but fans and pros are labeling it as a robbery. Going into the fight, he definitely underestimated what he was up against, because a determined Loma put up one hell of a performance, putting Haney on the back foot with more jabs than you can count. But every single time it seemed like the Ukrainian was getting the upper hand, Haney would come back with his deadly punches. At this point, when Loma landed blows to Haney's hands, stunning him with combinations, he was heading for a shock victory, or at least a hard-fought draw. But Haney somehow lifted to another gear in the final round. In the end, even though Loma was the more active fighter, every single one of the three judges scored the fight in Haney's favor. But no one was ready to accept that decision, and the crowd made sure the Americans knew that. I mean, the Las Vegas crowd literally chanted Loma throughout the fight, so it's pretty obvious boxing fans couldn't digest the result, especially the 116-112 scorecard, claiming that Loma was robbed of the win. As for the 35-year-old, he wasn't even ready to talk about it, and later broke down in tears in his dressing room when he realized he was this close to becoming an undisputed champion. Meanwhile, Haney wasn't the most confident undisputed champion I've seen in the boxing world, but he knew he got his name down in the history books forever, after the toughest fight he had. I mean, he literally beat a future Hall of Famer, even if the win was questionable. But with an unbeatable record of 30 wins with 15 knockouts, Haney kept the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO belts. Although if I were him, I wouldn't be celebrating too soon, considering the backlash he now has to face. Loma's furious team decided to appeal the defeat, and they had a lot of support to back them up. In fact, Loma's manager, Egis Klimas, called the decision insane and the biggest robbery in the middle of the day. And let me tell you, they're not ready to let it slide so easily, because Egis is ready to hold these judges accountable. Sure, it was a thrilling fight and a bunch of close rounds were tough to score, especially with the momentum shifts between the two boxers. But it was pretty obvious that Loma controlled the fight. Even if Haney won by unanimous decision, Loma won the popular vote of millions of fans. And they've taken over Twitter to show their support for the Ukrainian, who should have been the one holding the title belts, because the scorecards don't reflect what happened inside the boxing ring. Some fans even claimed that Loma was fighting something bigger than himself and the sport. And his unfair loss proves that the boxing world is coming down to the ground. As for pros, they didn't hold back their comments on the controversial win either. For one, combat sports personality Dylan Denise claimed Loma was robbed, while Bellator commentator Josh Thompson took the criticism one step further, saying this was why people don't want to watch boxing anymore, because they're raising the younger boxer over the guy who actually won the fight in the first place. But I gotta say, I didn't expect Shakur Stevenson to jump in as well, although it's not surprising that he also claimed that Loma was robbed of his win. But more importantly, he wasn't a fan of how Haney fled the ring right after saying a few words to the media. Instead, Shakur feels the boxer should have stuck around and faced the music because the fans were booing him like crazy, forcing him to run to his dressing room. And now, to set the record straight, #1 WBC-ranked Stevenson wants to fight Haney. But that depends on whether Haney's gonna stick around at 135, because this fight ends his 3-fight deal with Top Rank and Lou DiBella, leaving him with plenty of options. If he stays at 135, he could go into a highly anticipated fight against pound-for-pound contender Stevenson, or Gervonta Davis. But he's thinking about moving up to junior welterweight to pursue a second division title. Only time will tell how it plays out, because I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to avoid Shakur after the controversial win. Think about it. Shakur is out here claiming it wasn't even a competitive fight to begin with, and saving his comments on what he saw in Haney's performance that he could capitalize on. On top of that, there's not a lot Loma can do either, because this was his last chance to try and become the undisputed lightweight champion, and he came back empty-handed. Now, Haney's never going to give Loma the rematch he deserves, because he knows how he barely managed to escape with a win. If you take a look at the scorecards, you'll see that if Loma had won the final round on Cheatham and Sutherland cards, they would have wrapped up the fight with a majority draw, which I think a lot of people could have lived with. But not everyone's gonna sit back on this, and that's why Teddy Atlas wants Judge Dave Moretti to justify the scoring. Dave's the one who handed in the 116 to 112 scorecards, and to add on to the controversy, he scored in the 10th round for Haney, which many believe was one of the best rounds for Loma instead. In the same round, Loma landed 11 of 49 punches, while Haney barely made it through with 5 punches out of 25. And that's exactly why Atlas wants the judge to appear before the Nevada State Athletic Commission and explain his judgment. But if that doesn't work out, Atlas wants boxing fans to stand up for Loma and start a petition to disband NSAC instead. Honestly, if you ask me, I think it's about time someone took a stand after all, especially after the number of incidents in the boxing world, where talented boxers like Loma were robbed in the ring. These kinds of results are exactly why boxing is taking a hit, because no one's holding the judges accountable, at least on a higher level, and it seems like they're taking advantage of that now. Think about Floyd Mayweather, where fans didn't show up to his UK debut, mostly because they didn't forget what happened a couple of years ago. In his fight against Manny Pacquiao, the controversial scorecards led to another similar tragedy. Watching your favorite team lose on a bad referee's call is always going to be tough to watch. But seeing a ring warrior have his victory robbed from him by incompetent judges is something that fans can't easily digest. This fight drew a lot of attention, mostly because it ended under fishy circumstances, where Dave scored the fight 118 to 110 for Mayweather, while the other two judges had it at 116 to 112. Clearly, this was enough to stir up passionate fans who were watching their hero get robbed. And fast forward to 2023, they still haven't forgotten what happened. In Mayweather's UK debut, the 46-year-old made sure the audience knew that he's immune to bad press. Even though organizers were desperately trying to sell tickets as cheap as £5, but still hardly sold any. I mean, the entire top tier at the O2 was shut off because there was no one there. Sure, Mayweather can cover it up all he wants, saying that the tickets were put on sale too late and they set this up in a month. But fans and pros know why people didn't show up, because this isn't the first time it's happened. And the boxing world is filled with cases like these where fighters were robbed of their wins, like Jermaine Franklin, who wanted a rematch to set the score straight with Dylan White. In 2022, the 12-round fight between the two ended with a controversial victory. Franklin knew he'd done enough to win, especially the earlier rounds, but like Loma, he was helpless when White won by a majority decision. Call it a coincidence. But the scorecards for two of the judges were 116 to 112, while Michael Alexander scored the fight a draw at 115. After the fight, Franklin demanded a rematch, but he never got it. Instead, White is interested in battling Anthony Joshua for a rematch instead, which I'm pretty sure will be an easy win anyway. So, from a series of boxers like Franklin demanding rematches after they were robbed in the ring, to Devin's controversial win robbing Vasily Lomachenko of the undisputed lightweight title, was all about why Devin Haney proved boxing is dead.